Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to step into the world of medical detectives, because we're about to unravel a true mystery of the spine.
So, can a really rare bone disease actually solve the mystery of one man's crippling pain? Well, we're about to dive into a medical case that honestly reads like a detective story. And it starts, like so many of these stories do, with a patient in absolute distress and a diagnosis that just seems out of reach.
All right, so let's meet our patient. Our story begins with a 76-year-old man. And for 18 long months, he was just plagued by this severe back pain that shot all the way down his left thigh. Now, we're not talking about a minor ache here. This was a constant, life-altering problem that had completely taken over his life.
Just try to imagine pain so intense that you'd rate it an 8 out of 10. And to make things even worse, standard painkillers, they offered zero relief, absolutely nothing. I mean, you can imagine how that kind of chronic pain would just completely derail a person's life.
So, naturally, doctors had tried all the usual routes, non-operative treatments, but nothing was working. His symptoms were only getting worse. It became pretty clear they needed to look way deeper to figure out what was really going on inside his spine.
And so, the investigation began. The medical team turned to advanced imaging, hoping they could turn this diagnostic puzzle into more of a visual hunt for clues. I mean, they needed to actually see the problem to have any hope of understanding it.
So, what did they find? Well, what they found was puzzling, to say the least. The scans didn't reveal one simple, clear-cut problem. Instead, they uncovered two completely separate and distinct abnormalities, and each one seemed to be pointing to a totally different issue.
Okay, here's the first major clue, and this one came from the MRI. What you're looking at is a large, fluid-filled sac. It's called a synovial cyst, right there in his upper lumbar spine. You can see how it's just pressing directly on those nerve roots. I mean, this was the most obvious suspect for his intense, radiating pain.
But wait, there's more. The CT scan revealed a second and much, much stranger clue. If you look at his pelvic bone, you can see it's expanded, and its internal structure is just abnormal. It's thickened and unusually dense. This didn't seem related to a simple cyst at all. This looked like a completely different problem.
So now the team had a real puzzle on their hands. How could these two very, very different findings possibly be connected? The breakthrough moment came when they realized, wait a minute, these aren't two separate problems. They are actually two symptoms of a single underlying disease.
And that diagnosis? It was Paget's disease of the bone. So what is that? It's a chronic condition where the body's natural process of breaking down and rebuilding bone tissue, it just goes completely haywire. You can think of it like a bone remodeling crew that's working frantically, but they've lost the blueprints.
So, Paget's disease usually moves through 3 stages. First up, you have the lytic stage, where old bone gets broken down way too quickly. Then comes the mixed stage, where new bone forms in this rapid, chaotic rush. And finally, you get to the sclerotic stage. This is where all that new bone becomes really dense and hard. But here's the catch. It's structurally unsound. Kind of like a poorly built wall that looks strong but could easily crumble.
So what you end up with, because of this chaotic process, is bone that's actually weaker. It has more blood vessels, and it's way more susceptible to bending, deforming, and even fracturing when you compare it to healthy bone.
And this is what made the final diagnosis so remarkable. Connecting these two conditions is exceptionally rare. I mean, think about it. A synovial cyst, that's usually a mechanical wear and tear kind of problem. But Paget's, that's a deep-seated metabolic disease. Finding the link between them, that was the key to solving this whole mystery.
Okay, so with the full picture finally understood, the surgical team could at last plan their attack. They started preparing for a really complex and delicate procedure. The goal? To address both the immediate problem, that cyst, and the underlying instability caused by the disease.
All right, let's talk about the surgery. Just to get to the cyst, the surgeons had to perform this delicate procedure called a microsurgical laminectomy. And this view right here shows you the most crucial step. Carefully separating that thick-walled, blood-filled cyst away from the dura, which is the protective sheath around the spinal cord. Super delicate work.
Now, because they had to remove a pretty significant amount of bone just to get that cyst out, the spine was left potentially unstable. So, to solve that problem, they installed surgical hardware, rods and screws, to fuse and stabilize that whole section of the patient's spine. This was all about ensuring its long-term integrity.
And the result of all this? A complete success. Just 2 months after the surgery, that debilitating pain, the pain that had plagued him for nearly 2 years, was finally gone. After all that time, he finally had his life back.
So what's really interesting here isn't just the fantastic outcome for this patient. It's about what this single, really unusual case can teach the entire medical community. To really understand how significant this is, just look at this number. 2. Across all of modern medical history, how many times has a spinal cyst been directly linked to Paget's disease? The answer is 2. Including this patient, it has only been documented twice. That is how incredibly rare this connection is.
You know, this case is such a powerful reminder for doctors everywhere. When you're faced with a really common problem like back pain, sometimes the answer is anything but common. You have to think outside the box. It just proves how vitally important it is to do meticulous diagnostic work and to create a surgical plan that's tailored to the individual person, not just to the symptom.
And ultimately, it leaves all of us with a really fascinating question. This one patient's story has literally expanded the boundaries of medical knowledge. It just makes you wonder, right? How many other unique cases are out there right now that hold the keys to solving the next great medical mystery?